The notification lit up the iPad screen like a tiny bomb going off in my kitchen. Flight confirmation. Austin Bergstrom to Malay via Doha. Passengers. Griffin Warner, Giselle Mercer. March 21-28. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't. I'd grabbed what I thought was my iPad from the charging station by the coffee maker that Tuesday morning, still half asleep, planning to review my project timeline before my 9 a.m. stand-up. Griffin had already left for his early gym session, or so he said. The devices looked identical except for the case color, and in my pre-coffee haze, I'd picked up his slate gray one instead of my navy blue. The notification disappeared after a few seconds, but it had already burned itself into my retinas, into my brain, into every cell of my body. Malay, Maldives, March 21-28. That was the week Griffin told me he'd be at a critical product launch sprint in San Francisco. The week he said the entire engineering team would be locked in a hotel conference room, debugging and deploying their new AI model. The week he'd sighed heavily and said, "I'm so sorry, Sel. I know we were supposed to finally take that trip to Big Bend, but this launch is make or break for the company." I'd believed him. Of course I'd believed him. I stood there in our sun-filled kitchen, the one we'd renovated last year with those expensive white oak cabinets I'd obsessed over, holding his iPad with hands that had started to shake. Outside, I could hear our neighbors' sprinklers clicking on, that familiar morning sound of suburban Austin. Inside, my world was tilting sideways. Giselle Mercer. I knew exactly who she was. She'd joined Griffin's startup 8 months ago, this bubbly UX designer fresh from a gig at Google. All effortless beauty and that kind of energy that made everyone in a room turn to look at her. I'd met her exactly twice. Once at the company holiday party in December, where she'd laughed too loudly at all of Griffin's jokes, and once at a happy hour in January that I'd tagged along to because Griffin said it would be good for me to get out more. Both times, something in my gut had twisted. The way she touched his arm when she talked. The way her eyes lingered on him a beat too long. The inside jokes they already seemed to have after just a few months of working together. But Griffin had made me feel crazy for even mentioning it. Giselle? Come on, Sel. She's just enthusiastic. That's how people in tech are. Friendly, collaborative. You're reading into things that aren't there. I'm not trying to be paranoid, I'd said that night after the January happy hour, standing in this exact kitchen, feeling small and insecure. It just seemed like what? He'd cut me off, his voice carrying that edge of impatience I'd been hearing more and more lately. Like I can't have a normal working relationship with a female colleague? That's not fair to me, and it's honestly not fair to Giselle either. She's brilliant at her job. That's it. I dropped it. Swallowed my intuition like a bitter pill and told myself I was being the toxic, jealous wife. That I needed to work on my insecurity. That 5 years of failed fertility treatments had maybe made me paranoid and territorial. I'd been gaslighting myself on his behalf. Now, staring at that flight confirmation, every warning sign I'd ignored came flooding back in sharp, painful focus. The late nights he'd started keeping. The way he'd angled his phone away from me when texting. The new cologne he'd bought without mentioning it. The sudden interest in updating his entire wardrobe. The gym membership he'd gotten in January. Griffin, who'd always hated working out, suddenly doing 6 a.m. sessions 4 times a week. I'd explained it all away. He's stressed about the product launch. He's going through an early midlife crisis. He's finally taking his health seriously. He wants to look good for his new role as lead engineer. But no, he wanted to look good for her. My hands moved on autopilot, screenshotting the notification before it could disappear completely. Then I carefully placed his iPad back exactly where he'd left it, next to the Nespresso machine, and picked up my own. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, behind my eyes, in my fingertips. I had 17 days. 17 days before my husband and his mistress flew off to paradise together, probably funded by our joint savings account. Definitely during time he'd lied about spending in a San Francisco conference room. I walked to our home office. Well, his office now, since I'd given up my space when he said he needed more room for his equipment, and sat down at my desk in the corner. I opened my laptop with trembling hands and logged into our shared credit card account. There it was. 8,347s. 62 charged to Soneva Fushi Resort on February 14th, Valentine's Day. While he'd been supposedly working late that night, he'd been booking a luxury water villa in the Maldives with another woman. I scrolled further. Charges at Nordstrom, Lululemon, a jewelry store I didn't recognize, dinner reservations at Austin's most expensive restaurants on nights he'd told me he was eating with the team during late work sessions. The evidence was everywhere. I just hadn't been looking. Or maybe I had been looking, but I'd been too afraid to see. I thought about the 3 failed IVF rounds we'd gone through, the shots I'd given myself, the hormones that had turned me inside out emotionally, the hope that had died a little more with each negative test, the way Griffin had seemed relieved when we'd finally decided to stop trying 6 months ago, while I'd grieved the children we'd never have. Maybe it's for the best, he'd said gently, holding my hand in the fertility clinic's parking lot after our final appointment. We've got each other. We can travel more, focus on our careers. There's freedom in this cell. We just have to choose to see it. Now I wondered if he'd already been seeing Giselle by then. If he'd been relieved not because of some philosophical acceptance of our child-free life, but because kids would have complicated his exit strategy. I sat there for a long time, staring at transaction after transaction, watching our marriage unravel in line items and dollar amounts. Then something shifted inside me. The hurt started crystallizing into something harder, colder, sharper. I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. I wasn't going to scream or throw things or confront him in some messy, emotional scene that he could later describe to Giselle as more proof that I was unstable or difficult. No. I was going to do something much, much better. I picked up my phone and started making calls. I spent the next 3 days acting like everything was normal while simultaneously becoming someone I didn't recognize. A detective in my own marriage. Wednesday morning, I kissed Griffin goodbye like always, watched him grab his laptop bag and head out for another early gym session, then immediately opened the Find My app on my phone. His location pinged at a coffee shop in downtown Austin. Not the gym. 20 minutes later, Giselle's LinkedIn showed she'd posted from that exact same coffee shop, a latte art photo with the caption, "Fuel for another creative day." They weren't even trying to hide it. They just assumed I was too stupid or too trusting to notice. That night, Griffin came home around 9, claiming the team had ordered pizza at the office for a late work session. I could smell her perfume on his shirt when he hugged me, something floral and expensive that definitely wasn't pizza or office air conditioning. "How was your day?" I asked, my voice steady, almost cheerful. "Exhausting," he sighed, heading straight for the shower like he always did now. "This launch is killing us." I barely had time to think. I smiled at his back. "Sounds intense. You're working so hard." Thursday, I contacted Ramsey, Griffin's older brother, the divorce attorney in Houston. We'd always gotten along well, better than Griffin and Ramsey got along with each other, honestly. There was a rivalry there, some childhood competition that had never quite resolved. Ramsey had always been the golden child, Yale Law, successful practice, married to a surgeon, while Griffin was the tech genius who'd taken longer to find his footing. "Celeste?" Ramsey's voice was surprised when he answered. "This is unexpected. Everything okay?" "Not exactly," I said, sitting in my car in the Target parking lot where I'd driven to make this call in private. "I need legal advice. Confidential legal advice." There was a pause. "About Griffin?" "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. "Tell me everything." I did. I sent him screenshots of the flight confirmation, the credit card charges, everything. I watched the read receipts appear, then disappear, then appear again. "Jesus Christ," Ramsey finally said. "That fucking idiot? Mom is going to lose her mind." That's when the idea really started to take shape. Lila Warner, Griffin's mother, my mother-in-law for 11 years, was a formidable woman. Retired literature professor, devout Presbyterian, pillar of her Houston church community, and someone who valued loyalty and family above absolutely everything else. She'd raised her boys alone after Griffin's father died when they were teenagers, working 2 jobs to put them both through college. She thought Griffin walked on water. Her baby boy, the brilliant engineer, The devoted husband. She had no idea her devoted husband's son was about to abandon his marriage for a water villa, and a woman young enough to be his daughter. Ramsey, I said slowly, how would Lila feel about an early spring vacation? Somewhere tropical? I could hear the smile in his voice. Keep talking. By Friday, the plan was set. I used my accumulated credit card points, ironically many earned from Griffin's business expenses, to book 3 tickets to Malay. One for me, one for Lila, and one for Marlo, my best friend since college, who'd been threatening to murder Griffin with her bare hands ever since I'd told her everything via emergency wine night on Wednesday. I'm going to enjoy this so much, Marlo had said, pouring us both another glass of Pinot Noir in her South Congress apartment. Like, I know I should be more mature about this, but I'm not. I want to watch that man's face when he realizes he's caught. It gets better, I'd told her. We're bringing his mother. Marlo had literally choked on her wine. The cover story was simple and brilliant. I'd won a travel writing assignment. Plausible since I'd done some freelance travel blogging years ago. And the publication wanted me to bring guests to review the family-friendly aspects of luxury resorts. Lila, always proud of my creative pursuits, as she called them, accepted immediately. Oh, honey, how wonderful, she'd gushed over the phone. I've always wanted to see the Maldives. And how sweet that you thought of me. Griffin must be so proud. He doesn't know yet, I'd said smoothly. It's all happening so fast. I'll surprise him with the news. He'll be thrilled you're pursuing your passions again, Lila had said warmly. You know, Celeste, I've always admired how you've supported his career. A lot of women wouldn't be so understanding about the long hours and travel. The irony was so bitter I could taste it. That weekend, Griffin was especially attentive. Guilt, probably. He took me to brunch at our favorite spot on South Lamar, held my hand across the table, asked about my week with seemingly genuine interest. You seem good, he observed, studying my face. More relaxed than you've been in a while. I am, I said honestly. I think I'm finally accepting where we are. You know, with everything. The IVF stuff, the career focus. I'm making peace with our life. Something flickered in his eyes. Relief? Guilt? I couldn't tell anymore. I'm glad, he said softly. I worry about you sometimes. You've been through so much. We've been through so much, I wanted to scream. We failed at having kids. We had to grieve that loss. But he'd already moved on. Already found his consolation prize in the form of a 28-year-old with perfect skin and no baggage. I'm tougher than I look, I said instead, smiling. Sunday night, I watched him pack for his San Francisco trip. He was meticulous about it, folding swim trunks that he definitely wouldn't need for a conference room sprint, packing the new cologne, including the linen shirts he'd bought at Nordstrom that I'd seen on our credit card statement. Taking the swimsuit? I asked casually from our bedroom doorway. Planning to hit the hotel pool between sessions? Oh, maybe, he said without looking up. The hotel has a rooftop thing. Might be nice to decompress. Lie after lie after lie delivered so smoothly. Sounds nice, I said. You deserve a break. You've been working so hard. He finally looked at me then, and for just a second, I thought I saw something crack in his expression. Regret? Shame? But then he smiled, walked over, and kissed my forehead. I love you, Cel. You know that, right? I know, I whispered. Monday morning, I drove him to the airport, kissed him goodbye at departures, told him to text me when he landed in San Francisco. Then I drove home, called in sick to work for the rest of the week, and finished preparing for my own trip. Marlo came over Monday night to help me pack. We sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by resort wear and sunscreen, and she said what I'd been thinking. Are you sure you want to do this? Like, really sure? Because once we show up there, there's no taking it back. I looked at the framed photo on my nightstand, Griffin and me on our wedding day, 11 years ago, both of us so young and hopeful and stupidly in love. I'd been 25. I'd believed in forever. I'm sure, I said. He took my trust, my fertility years, my dignity, and my marriage. I'm taking his comfort, his secret, and his mother's good opinion. It's the least he deserves. Marlo raised her wine glass. To justice, I echoed. Tuesday, Griffin texted me a selfie from what was supposedly his San Francisco hotel room, but I'd reverse image searched photos of Soneva Fushi, and I recognized that distinctive overwater villa architecture in the background, badly cropped out. Miss you already. Meetings start early tomorrow. Love you. I stared at that text for a long time. Then I typed back, miss you too. Have an amazing time. You deserve it. And I meant every word. We landed in Malé on Friday morning, March 22nd, after a brutal 23-hour journey through Doha. I'd barely slept on the plane, running through every possible scenario in my head, every way this could go right or catastrophically wrong. Lila had slept peacefully in her business class seat. Another irony, since Griffin's miles had paid for her ticket to witness his downfall. She'd been cheerful throughout the entire journey, talking about the books she'd brought, the underwater restaurant she'd read about, how proud she was that I was finally pursuing my creative work again. Marlowe, sitting next to me in the dark cabin somewhere over the Indian Ocean, had squeezed my hand and whispered, "You can still back out. We can tell Lila the assignment fell through, spend a week at the resort, and go home. No confrontation, no drama." "No," I'd said firmly. "I need to see his face. I need him to know that I knew, that I'm not the naive little wife he thinks I am." Now, stepping into the humid Maldivian air, reality hit me like a wave. We were really doing this. The seaplane transfer to Soneva Fushi took another 40 minutes. Lila pressed her face to the window like a child, exclaiming over the impossible blue of the water, the tiny islands scattered like emeralds across the ocean. My stomach was in knots. I'd called ahead to the resort 3 days earlier, speaking with a concierge named Aisha, who'd been incredibly understanding when I'd explained, in carefully vague terms, that I was planning a surprise reunion with my husband who was already staying there. "We need complete discretion," I'd said. "He can't know we're coming. It's for our anniversary." A surprise renewal of vows with his mother present. Aisha had been utterly charmed. "How romantic." "Don't worry, Mrs. Warner. We'll make sure it's a complete surprise. We won't mention your reservation to anyone." The lie had come so easily. Maybe I'd learned from the best. Our villa, number 48, right next to Griffin's number 47, was stunning. Massive windows overlooking turquoise water, a private deck with steps leading directly into the ocean, an outdoor shower, a bed that could fit 6 people. Lila gasped when she walked in. "Oh, Celeste, this is extraordinary. How on earth did your publication afford this?" "They really wanted quality coverage," I said smoothly, setting down my bag. My hands were shaking. "Why don't you and Marlowe get settled? I need to check in with the photographer about our shooting schedule." The photographer, of course, didn't exist, but I needed air. I needed to think. I walked out onto our deck, staring at the water villa next door. Griffin was over there, probably 20 feet away, separated by some palm trees and a small stretch of ocean. With her. My phone buzzed. A text from Ramsey. "Mom know yet?" "Not yet. Few more hours. You're braver than the Marines, Celeste. Godspeed." I'd spent hours with Ramsey over video calls this past week, strategizing. He'd helped me prepare divorce papers, already drafted, already printed, already signed by me, waiting only for Griffin's signature. He'd helped me document everything. The timeline of the affair, the misuse of joint funds, the lies. In Texas, adultery could impact property division, and while it wasn't the 1950s anymore, it mattered. It all mattered. "I'll be your attorney of record," Ramsey had said. "And honestly, after what he's done to you, after everything you went through with the fertility treatments while he was apparently checked out, I'll take him to the cleaners pro bono. He's my brother, but this is unforgivable." There was something else Ramsey had told me, something I'd been holding close like a secret weapon. Griffin's startup was about to go public. The IPO was scheduled for May, just 2 months away. His stock options, currently worth around $400,000, would likely triple in value once the company hit the market. Under Texas community property law, I was entitled to half of everything acquired during our marriage, including those options. If Griffin wanted to keep this affair quiet, if he wanted to avoid the embarrassment of his mother knowing, of his colleagues finding out, of any scandal that might affect his professional reputation right before a major IPO. He'd sign whatever I put in front of him. I'd learned something about myself this past week. I was much more ruthless than I'd ever imagined. Around 2 p.m., I got a notification from the Find My app. Griffin's location showed he was at the resort's main restaurant, about a 10-minute walk from the villas. I checked the resort app. He'd made a reservation for 2 at 2:30 p.m. at the Overwater Japanese restaurant. Perfect. Lila, Marlo, I called back into the villa, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I have a surprise, a really big surprise, but I need you to trust me, and I need you to stay calm. Marlo immediately knew. Her eyes went wide. Now? Now. Lila looked confused, smiling uncertainly. What kind of surprise, dear? I sat down next to her on the plush sofa, took her hands in mine. Lila, Griffin is here, at this resort, right now. Her face lit up. What? Oh my goodness, you planned this? A family reunion? How wonderful. He's not here for us, I said gently, firmly. He's here with another woman, a coworker. He told me he was in San Francisco for work. He's been lying for months. I found out, and I needed you to see it, to know the truth. I'm so sorry. The transformation of Lila's face was something I'll never forget. The joy draining out of it like color from a photograph. The confusion, the denial, the slow, horrible understanding. No, she whispered. No, not Griffin. He wouldn't. I showed her my phone, the screenshots, the credit card charges, the flight confirmations, everything. Marlo moved to sit on Lila's other side, supportive, protective. Lila stared at the evidence for a long time, her hands starting to shake. When she finally looked up at me, there were tears in her eyes, but also something harder. Steel. Show me, she said quietly. I need to see this with my own eyes. We walked to the Japanese restaurant together, the three of us. Lila had changed into a crisp white linen dress, put on lipstick, pulled herself together with that formidable dignity that made her who she was. She looked like she was going to war. The restaurant was built over the water, all sleek wood and paper screens and ocean views. We arrived just as Griffin and Giselle were being seated at a private table on the far deck. I watched them from behind a decorative screen, my breath catching. Griffin looked relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years, laughing at something Giselle said, reaching across the table to touch her hand. She was wearing a white sundress that probably cost more than most people's rent, her hair perfect, her skin glowing. They looked happy. They looked like a couple in a luxury resort commercial. They looked like what Griffin and I used to look like, back when we were happy, back before the fertility treatments and the disappointment and the slow erosion of everything we'd built. For a second, just a second, I almost turned around. Almost let them have this. Almost decided that maybe I was the problem. Maybe I had driven him away with my sadness and my inability to give him children and my neediness. Then Giselle threw her head back and laughed at something Griffin said, and I saw him look at her the way he used to look at me, and the moment passed. That's her, I said quietly to Lila. That's Giselle. Lila was silent for a long moment, watching her son be tender with another woman. Then she straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and started walking toward their table. Marlo grabbed my hand. Here we go, she whispered. I let Lila go first. This was her moment too. Her son, her disappointment, her heartbreak. She'd earned the right to lead this confrontation. We were about 10 feet away when Griffin looked up and saw us. I watched in real time as his brain tried to process what his eyes were seeing. Confusion first, then recognition, then absolute, total, world-ending horror. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward into the water with a splash. Mom? His voice cracked. Celeste? What? How? Giselle turned around, saw us, and went completely white. Lila stopped directly in front of their table, regal and terrible as a queen pronouncing judgment. Hello, Griffin, she said, her voice steady and cold as ice. I hear you've been in San Francisco. Funny. It looks a lot like the Maldives to me. The expression on Griffin's face was everything I'd imagined and more. Shock, panic, guilt, shame, fear, all of it flickering across his features like a broken film reel. "I can explain," he started, but his voice was shaking. It's not what it looks like," I finished for him, stepping forward to stand beside Lila. "Because it looks like you lied to your wife, used our money to fly your mistress to a luxury resort, told me you were debugging code in a conference room while you were actually, what, Griffin? Planning your new life? Celebrating ditching the broken wife who couldn't give you kids?" My voice was rising. People at other tables were starting to notice. Giselle was crying now, quietly, her hands over her mouth. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean to fuck a married man," Marlo cut in sharply. "Or you didn't mean to get caught." "Marlo," Lila said sharply, but there was approval in her voice. Griffin was still staring at his mother, and I realized that Lila's presence was actually worse for him than mine. He could have handled me. He'd been preparing to handle me eventually. Probably already had his speech planned about how we'd grown apart, how he'd tried to make it work, how sometimes love just dies. But his mother? The woman who'd sacrificed everything for him? Whose approval he'd spent his entire life seeking? That he wasn't prepared for. "Mom," he tried again, his voice small. "Please, let you what?" Lila's voice was sharp as broken glass. "Let you explain how you became the kind of man who lies? Who cheats? Who abandons his marriage vows? Who disappoints every value I tried to raise you with?" She was magnificent. Griffin's face crumpled. He actually started crying. Giselle reached for him, but he jerked away from her touch. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to find out like this. I was going to tell you, Sel. I swear I was going to—" "When?" I asked quietly, and the silence after that question felt like it might swallow the world. "When were you going to tell me, Griffin?" He had no answer. The manager of the restaurant, a composed Maldivian man named Hassan, appeared within minutes, clearly alarmed by the scene unfolding on his pristine deck. Other diners were openly staring now, some with their phones out, though Hassan politely asked them to respect everyone's privacy. "Perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private?" Hassan suggested gently, looking between all of us with professional concern. "No," Lila said firmly, never taking her eyes off Griffin. "I think we're fine right here. My son seems to enjoy public displays. Don't you, Griffin? Instagram-worthy vacations with your mistress?" Giselle flinched at the word mistress like she'd been slapped. We're not. It's not like that," she stammered. "We have a real connection. We love each other." "You've known him for 8 months," I said flatly. "I've been married to him for 11 years. You don't know him at all." "I know him better than you think," Giselle shot back, some defiance creeping into her voice now, desperation making her bold. "He's told me everything. How unhappy he's been. How you've been distant and cold since the fertility stuff. How you made him feel like a failure." "Stop." Griffin's voice cut through hers, sharp and panicked. "Giselle, stop talking." But she didn't. "He said you blamed him for not being able to have kids, that you resented him, that your marriage has been dead for years." "I said stop!" Griffin shouted, and the entire restaurant went silent. Marlo let out a low whistle. "Wow. So that's the story you've been selling her? That Celeste is the villain in your marriage? That's world-class gaslighting, Griffin. Really impressive." Lila's face had gone very pale. "You blamed your wife for the fertility problems? You told this child that Celeste made you feel like a failure?" Her voice was shaking now, fury breaking through the controlled surface. "Griffin Thomas Warner, I raised you better than this." The middle name. When Lila used the middle name, you knew it was serious. Griffin knew it too. He looked like he might throw up. "It wasn't like that," he said weakly. "Giselle's misunderstanding." "Am I?" Giselle stood up now, her own anger surfacing. "Because you've spent months telling me how trapped you felt, how you were planning to ask for a divorce but didn't know how I was your escape, your second chance at happiness. Was all of that a lie too?" Oh, this was better than I could have scripted. They were turning on each other. Griffin looked between Giselle and me, trapped, and I could see him doing the calculation in real time. Which relationship could he salvage? Which woman would destroy him less? He chose wrong. "Giselle, please," he said, reaching for her hand. "You have to understand, this is complicated." That's when Lila slapped him. Not hard. Lila wasn't a violent woman, but sharp enough that the crack echoed across the water. Griffin's head snapped to the side, his hand flying to his cheek, shock written all over his face. "Mom, don't you dare mom me," Lila said, her voice breaking now, tears starting to fall. "I buried your father when you were 16 years old. I worked 2 jobs to put you and your brother through college. I taught you about integrity, about honor, about treating people with respect. And this is what you do with those lessons? You throw away a good woman who stood by you through everything? You lie to everyone who loves you? You become this?" Griffin was crying openly now, and so was Lila. And honestly, so was I. 11 years of marriage, ending in a restaurant over the Indian Ocean while strangers watched, and my husband's mistress stood there realizing she'd been lied to just as much as I had. I pulled the envelope from my bag, the one I'd been carrying since we landed. "I want a divorce," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "These papers are already drawn up. Ramsey helped me. You're going to sign them." Griffin's head snapped toward me. "Ramsey knows? Jesus Christ, Celeste. Everyone's going to know," I said calmly, "unless you sign. Right now. Because if you don't, I have a video I took 5 minutes ago of you and Giselle at this table, looking very cozy, and I will send it to your entire company, including your CEO, including your board members, 2 months before your IPO. I watched that land, watched him understand the full scope of what I was capable of. "You wouldn't," he whispered. "Try me," I said. "You think I won't burn your professional reputation to the ground? You destroyed our marriage while I was pumping myself full of hormones trying to have your baby. You used our money to fly your affair partner to paradise. You made me feel crazy for trusting my instincts. So yeah, Griffin, I absolutely would." Marlo pulled a pen from her purse. She'd been prepared for this moment, and handed it to me. I placed it on top of the envelope and held both out to Griffin. "Sign," I said. "Or I press send." "What are the terms?" he asked, his lawyer instincts kicking in even through the tears and panic. 50-50 split of all assets, including your stock options. Full dissolution of marriage, no contest, and you pay my legal fees. The stock options are worth $400,000 now, probably over $1 million after the IPO. I know. I'm entitled to half under Texas community property law. Ramsey made that very clear. I stepped closer. "You want to negotiate? We can do this in an Austin courtroom where all your colleagues and friends will find out exactly why your marriage ended. Or you can sign here now, and we keep this relatively quiet. Your choice." Giselle was staring at him now with something like horror. "Wait, you're married? Like legally married right now? You told me you were separated. You said it was basically over. You were just waiting for the right time." "We live together," I said to her, almost gently. "We sleep in the same bed. We had sex 2 weeks ago. He kissed me goodbye at the airport on Monday and told me he loved me. Does that sound separated to you?" She stepped away from Griffin like he was contagious. Oh my God, I'm the other woman. I thought, you said—" "He lies," Marlo said helpfully. "It's kind of his thing." Griffin was staring at the papers like they were a death sentence. In a way, they were. The death of his perfect image, his controlled narrative, his ability to play both sides. "If I sign," he said slowly, "you'll keep this quiet? You won't tell the company?" "I'll keep the video private," I said. "I can't control what your mother tells people, or what Giselle tells people, or what the other guests here might share on social media. But from me directly? Silence. Unless you contest anything in these papers. Then all bets are off." He looked at Lila one more time, some last desperate appeal for understanding, but her face was stone. "You're not the son I raised," she said quietly. "I don't know who you are anymore." That broke him. His hands were shaking as he took the pen and signed every page. I watched him write his name, Griffin T. Warner, over and over. legally ending what we'd built together. When he finished, I took the papers back, checked every signature, and slipped them into my bag. "We're done," I said simply. "Celeste!" He reached for me, but I stepped back. "No, we're done, Griffin. Enjoy your vacation." I turned and walked away, Marlo and Lila flanking me like bodyguards. Behind us, I could hear Giselle's voice rising. "You told me you were separated. You said your marriage was over. How could you lie about something like that?" "Please, Giselle, just listen." "No, I quit my job at Google for you. I moved to Austin for you. I thought we were building something real." Their relationship was imploding in real time, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, just exhaustion. Back in our villa, Lila sat down heavily on the couch and put her face in her hands. "I need to call Ramsey," she said. "I need to tell him what his brother has become." "He already knows," I said softly. "He's been helping me through all of this." Lila looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "I'm so sorry, Celeste. I'm so sorry you had to go through this. You deserved so much better than what my son gave you." I sat down next to her and took her hand. "You raised him right, Lila. He made his own choices." That night, Marlo ordered room service, champagne and lobster and chocolate cake, and the three of us had our own celebration on the deck under the stars. "To divorce," Marlo toasted. "To dignity," Lila added. "To being done with lying men," I finished. We clinked our glasses together, and for the first time in days, maybe months, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed. A text from Griffin. "Can we please talk? I need to explain." I blocked the number and poured myself more champagne. Lila flew back to Houston on Saturday morning. Before she left, she hugged me on the dock while we waited for her seaplane, holding on longer than usual. "You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for," she said. "I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening. I'm sorry I raised a son who could do this." "You raised 2 sons," I reminded her gently. "Ramsey turned out pretty great." She smiled sadly. 1 out of 2. Not a perfect record. She pulled back, studying my face. "What will you do now?" "Stay," I said. "I paid for the week. I'm going to use it." And I did. Marlo left Sunday. She had a wedding shoot back in Austin she couldn't reschedule. But I stayed in that beautiful villa for 5 more days. Alone. I did all the things Griffin and Giselle had probably planned to do together. I snorkeled over coral reefs so vibrant they looked painted. I got a massage at the spa that made me cry for reasons that had nothing to do with physical pain. I read 3 books on the beach. I ate long, slow dinners by myself, watching the sunset turn the ocean into liquid gold. And I thought about everything. About the girl I'd been at 25, so sure that love and commitment were enough. About the woman I'd become at 36, learning the hard way that sometimes they're not. About all the small moments when I'd ignored my intuition, because I didn't want to be the crazy, jealous wife. About how I'd made myself smaller and quieter and more convenient, thinking that's what marriage required. On my last night, I sat on the deck with a glass of wine and finally let myself cry. Not for Griffin, I was done crying over him, but for the future I'd imagined. The children we'd never have, the family photos that would never exist, the growing old together that was never going to happen. I grieved it all, there in paradise, and then I let it go. Wednesday morning, I flew back to Austin, back to real life. The house felt different when I walked in, empty in a way it hadn't been before, even though physically, nothing had changed. Griffin's things were still there, his books, his clothes, his fancy coffee maker. But he wasn't. He'd texted Marlo, since I'd blocked him, asking if he could stay with a friend while we figured things out. There was nothing to figure out. The papers were signed. Ramsey had already filed them with the Travis County Clerk's office. Griffin tried calling from different numbers over the next few weeks. I blocked every single one. He sent emails that I filtered directly to trash. He even showed up at the house once, but I didn't answer the door. Lila handled the family communication. She told Ramsey, of course, who'd been expecting it. She told her church friends that Griffin and I were divorcing due to irreconcilable differences and breaches of trust, which was delicate enough to preserve some privacy, but clear enough that people read between the lines. She didn't tell them about Giselle specifically, but she didn't have to. Small communities talk. Austin's tech scene is smaller than people think. Word got around. Giselle quit the startup 2 weeks after the Maldives. I heard through Marlo, who heard through a friend who worked there, that she'd moved back to California. The relationship with Griffin had apparently ended somewhere over the Indian Ocean, shortly after she'd realized she'd been just as manipulated as I had been. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Griffin stayed at the company through the IPO in May. The stock went public at a valuation that made his options worth $1.3 million. My half came to $650,000, minus taxes. Ramsey handled everything, making sure every penny I was owed got deposited into my new, separate bank account. I used some of it to pay off the house, now solely mine, per the divorce settlement. The rest I invested, following advice from a financial planner Ramsey recommended. By June, the divorce was final. 11 years, dissolved in 3 months of paperwork. Griffin sent one last email after the final decree came through. Ramsey forwarded it to me, asking if I wanted to read it. I did. Celeste, I know you won't respond to this, but I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I was a coward and a liar, and I threw away the best thing in my life because I was too broken to appreciate what I had. You deserved better than me. You deserved everything. I hope you find happiness. I hope you find someone who sees how extraordinary you are. I'm sorry I stopped seeing it. Gee. I read it twice, then deleted it. There was nothing left to say. People ask me now if I regret it. The dramatic confrontation, bringing his mother, the public humiliation. They ask if I wish I'd handled it differently, more privately, with more dignity. The answer is no. Griffin took my dignity when he lied to my face for months. He took my peace when he made me doubt my own intuition. He took my time when he let me believe we were building a life together while he was planning his exit with someone else. I took back my power. On my terms, in front of witnesses. That's not revenge, that's justice. These days, I'm doing okay. Better than okay, actually. I got a promotion at work. I started therapy. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during the marriage. I'm learning who I am outside of being someone's wife. Marlo and I took a trip to Portland last month. Just us, no drama, no hidden agendas. We hiked and ate amazing food and laughed until we cried. And it felt like being young again, like having possibilities. Lila calls me every Sunday. She apologizes every time, and every time I tell her she doesn't need to. We've actually gotten closer since the divorce. Sometimes the family you choose is more real than the family you marry into. Last week, I ran into someone I knew from Griffin's company at Whole Foods. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, like she didn't know whether to acknowledge me or pretend she hadn't noticed. "Celeste," she said finally. "Hey, how are you?" "I'm really good," I said. And I meant it. She looked surprised. "That's great. That's really great. You look happy." "I am," I said simply, "because here's what I've learned. Happiness isn't about the perfect marriage or the perfect life or the perfect plan that never falls apart. It's about knowing your worth. It's about refusing to shrink yourself to fit someone else's narrative. It's about standing up and saying no more when the people who should love you treat you like you're disposable." Griffin taught me what I don't want. The Maldives taught me what I'm capable of. And the months since have taught me who I actually am when I'm not performing the role of devoted wife. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm not waiting for closure or apologies, or for him to realize what he lost. I'm just done. And honestly, that's the best revenge of all.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.